you can be a wonderful writer, but your book still has to be marketed. People need to know it's out there. And so I think the people who make the decision to work with a ghostwriter also have a bit of a different mindset because they need to invest in the ghostwriter. Some of the really big publishing houses will provide the ghostwriter for the author. So they're already willing to invest and learn because it's a learning process to work with a ghostwriter. And I think that all goes into making their books more successful because they understand the need for marketing and how much, even if someone else is writing their book, they need to be really invested in it because they need to talk about it. They need to talk about it on their social media, talk to their friends about it, be willing to make it better.
Welcome to the latest edition of Adeptus On-Air, and today we have a special guest in Maggie Mills. Maggie is an author, a writing coach, a ghostwriter as well. So, Maggie, thanks so much for joining the show.
Thank you for inviting me. This is fun to have a chance to chat with you.
Awesome, very much looking forward to it. So Maggie, writing is a skill that is not doesn't come natural or easy for a lot of people. What are some of the challenges that you find when taking on clients? Learning to write a book or things like that. What are some of the common challenges you see?
Well, I have found that across the board, no matter what the experience or education level is, yes, it's very intimidating that people oftentimes writing a book is on their bucket list. They dream of doing this. And they're thinking about the task of the entire book and how long this is going to take. And the first thing we do is break it down into smaller pieces. Like with many tasks, we start with an outline. And then by the time we work through the outline, that helps get us organized and enthused. So we do little bits at a time. And that really helps.
Awesome. Do you find nonfiction writing or fiction writing more difficult for for your clients because they're both different. One's a true story, maybe autobiography, things like that, and one may be fantasy that they came up from their creativity.
No one's asked me that before, and I'm so glad you asked that because I've discovered something kind of interesting, really, and I don't know what to make of it. So I'm interested in your feedback.
Mhm.
Um, my clients tend to find nonfiction a little more challenging
Interesting.
because it's so personal and they're not sure what to share and what people will think of them. I personally find fiction more challenging. Um, and I have a wild imagination that just doesn't stop. So it's not coming up with the ideas, it's trying to conform to a particular structure. So for me, nonfiction is easier. For my authors, when I'm coaching them, they find nonfiction more challenging. My fiction authors are just like running off with it and having lots of fun.
No, that's interesting. I'm thinking from the other perspective. I could see how nonfiction would be challenging because you're thinking of what's your interpretation of the truth and what happened, what maybe there's other people involved, what their interpretation is, how would they take it based on how I couched my experience with something that maybe multiple people have experienced at the same time. So it's probably all those things and thoughts involved versus just just fiction where it's just fantasy and your imagination.
Exactly. And with nonfiction writing, my authors have this tendency to wonder, is anybody really interested? Have I belabored the point? And I'm always encouraging them, tell me more, give me more detail. Very seldom do I say, okay, well, we've had enough of that.
Yeah. Yeah, more details always
More
better.
detail.
Right? How did you get involved in being a coach and author? Where did your kind of career path start in that sense?
My gosh, my whole career has been falling backwards into whatever opportunity came my way. I would say yes, because I had bills to pay and a kid to raise. And if someone said, can you do this? I went, oh, yes, I'll get that done. And then I figure out how to do it and go, here you go.
That's
And I started writing very early, but making a career out of it is something completely different. Like so many of your listeners, I'm sure the careers have gone like this. Um, I studied I started out studying news writing and then graphic design and computer animation, and I worked in advertising and publishing, and it seemed like all the jobs I had required writing, and I just started doing more, and I was editing, and the editing became rewriting, and then the rewriting became, "Can you just write the whole book?" And I
Yeah,
just kept saying yes to everything.
yeah. Also, I read a interesting stat that ghost written books are 4 times more read or profitable. It blew my mind. What does that mean? I don't even know what that means. How do you interpret that? Why is that?
Well, I think it's because ghostwriters are pushy. Uh, I don't know, but 1 or 2 other ghostwriters, and they're certainly not the ones who are getting press out there writing for the prince. I don't know him personally. Um, we encourage people, again, like asking more and more questions, and for the people who write their own books, and certainly everyone is capable of writing their own book, but when working with a ghostwriter, and I can speak for the way I work because I haven't worked with another ghostwriter to see how they do this. I ask a lot of questions and I have them retell stories, and that gives their book depth and detail. And you can be a wonderful writer, but your book still has to be marketed. People need to know it's out there. And so I think the people who make the decision to work with a ghostwriter also have a bit of a different mindset because they need to invest in the ghostwriter. Some of the really big publishing houses will provide the ghostwriter for the author. So they're already willing to invest and learn because it's a learning process to work with a ghostwriter. And I think that all goes into making their books more successful because they understand the need for marketing and how much, even if someone else is writing their book, they need to be really invested in it because they need to talk about it. They need to talk about it on their social media, talk to their friends about it, be willing to make it better. So it's the mindset, I think, of someone. And I'd like to say the writing has improved a little bit too, but I haven't read all the ghost written books out there.
That's true. That's true. Flipping the questions on the other side, as a ghostwriter, author of their story, how do you get into the psyche of the person? Because you're telling their story through them, but you're the ghostwriter that's writing it. So you almost have to get to know the client, pretty
Oh,
intimately.
absolutely, and I enjoy that so much because we we want it to be in their voice. It should sound like the author, not like Maggie, because Maggie is Mary, she doesn't even know her own name. See how many people I write for? Who am I? My name. Maggie is kinda scattered and sarcastic and has a very dark sense of humor. I the most ridiculous things funny, and the authors don't want to sound like that. So what I do in working with the authors, and I take that work very seriously, I mean, it's my raison d'être. Um, I will sort of investigate them like an author studying like an actor studying for a role. If they have an online presence, any interviews, I go check all those. I read any material they provide to me. Have they written white papers? Do they have a blog? Or, do they have a YouTube channel? So I get to know them before we put one word down on paper. And then when we get to the first chapter, that's where we really work together. We spend more time on the first chapter generally than the other ones. That's when we work together to make sure I am writing in their voice. And we hit it pretty close, like 90% of the time, the first chapter is really close to their voice.
Wow, wow. And for our audience who may not know, you mentioned the first chapter. what is that structure usually like? What kind of content is usually in that first chapter versus the progression of the book?
Well, it can be kind of formulaic, and there's nothing wrong with that because it's marketable, it's what the reader expects. And so I meet with my authors, much like you and I are talking right now. I can see them, I can hear them, I can watch their mannerisms, their expressions, and I tape all that. And so I'm picking up on their speech patterns as well. So we tape that and we discuss the first chapter is who you are,
Hmm.
what you want to do with this book, why you're qualified, why should people listen to you? And when I say why you're qualified, I'm not talking about how many degrees you have. I'm talking about your lived experience
Yeah.
and why you want to share it. And then part of the first chapter is like a movie trailer. You're going to touch on little highlights that the reader can expect throughout the rest of the book. You can leave, a little bit of suspense. Find out what happened after I was released from jail. Or in books that are more teaching, you can tell people when you finish this book, you will walk away with the skill to make balloon animals, and I will teach you 7 different steps to do this. So the first chapter is like a movie trailer.
Gotcha. That's awesome. That's awesome. And what is book doctoring? I read that and I wasn't sure the concept of book doctoring. What exactly is that?
That's gonna be called by different names according to the publisher, according to the author. Um, Book doctoring, like ghostwriting, a lot of authors would not want anyone to know they've had that process done. And so we'll call it a collaboration, we'll call it heavy editing. And basically, it's when someone has written their entire book
Okay.
and they turn it over to a ghostwriter or an editor who goes in and basically fixes many things in the book. Let's say for a fiction book, I will go in and I'll beef up the dialogue a little bit because that's something that's really difficult for people. They understand action and plot, but their dialogue is lacking a little bit. So I will go in and fix that. I find gaps. It's basically fixing it. The authors put in a lot of work. They have great ideas, good stories, and I go and zoosh up the whole book.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Thanks for explaining that. Something that I've always personally found a challenge with writing is writing funny. Like I feel like orally it's easier to tell a joke, and you can use mannerisms and stuff like that. But actually, writing funny is very difficult for me. I would assume that might be a challenge for other people. But how do you accomplish that part of it? And have you had experience with, I don't know, comedians or books
I've had
like
a couple of authors come to me and ask me, "Can you make me sound funny?"
that?
And I enjoy this, and I give them the little talk, "We want the book to sound like you because you're gonna be speaking." A lot of people use their books to launch a public speaking career or to it really helps if you're applying for a speaking gig to go, "Oh, well, I'm published and here are my books." So they need to match each other, and in some cases, the people who want to sound funny are, like, the most serious people you'd ever wanna meet. A little challenged by that one. So you can't just drop in, borscht belt jokes and knock-knock jokes. Obviously, that doesn't work. You can use humor by finding something that contrasts with the author's personality. For instance, if they're retelling a situation and they're normally a very quiet, reserved person, you can do something like, well, when he told me that, I accepted what he was saying, but on the inside, I really wanted to poke him in the ear with my high heel. You know, you word it correctly. It's such a contrast to their regular personality. It will get people to laugh a little bit, like, "Her? I can't imagine she would want something like that." So you can work a little bit with contrast
That's
using internal dialogue, something like that.
that makes sense. It makes 100% sense. Maggie, what are some of your favorite projects that you've worked on, and why were they some of your favorite projects?
Oh
What,
my gosh. Well, I tend to fall in love with all my authors, whether I'm writing for them or coaching them or editing, because I just do. You get to know people very well working together. It's a really intimate process because people are telling me their deepest, darkest secret, and some of them make the book. Um, so I I'm invested in their story. And I like to answer your question, I'll get back there eventually. Um, I like working with multiple authors at a time because the material contrasts. I can work with one author on something very, very serious. You know, I've worked with people who've had serious trauma, victims of crime, people who are recovering from serious illnesses, and they're telling a wonderful story that will help other people, and they've been through so much. I admire them greatly. And when I get off calls like that, that can be kinda heavy. It's really moving, they're talking about serious things, and then my next call will be with a children's author, and we
mm,
get to laugh and talk about how we can have animals, dialogue for animals, and what they should look like, and the proper words to use with the 5th grade audience. So instead of a favorite, I think what I enjoy is the variety of authors, and I learn something from every single author. It is such a gift for me. I come away with so much more.
yeah, you actually get to relive their experiences and kind of take in, lessons and things.
Oh, absolutely. I am usually able to maintain a distance no matter what people are telling me, and you know, and then how did they remove the bullet? What did they use? You know, and I'm all about the facts, and I only feel some of the emotion when I get off of the call, but, oh my gosh, I've met so many inspiring people, and that's why I encourage everyone to share their story because you just don't know, and it doesn't have to be a nonfiction story. One of my fiction authors, I love it, they stay in touch with me. I get pictures of the sonogram, I get baby announcements, retirement announcements. I just, oh my gosh. Um, she wrote back to me and she had done a book signing and she emailed me the next morning and she couldn't believe it. She goes, I wrote this, you know, kind of like a little romance book. And this woman walked up to me and told me how much it meant to her and it helped her understand what she was going through. And she goes, this is fiction. And she was in tears. She goes, I can't believe it meant so much to somebody.
That's true. That's true. Yeah, words are powerful. They definitely can make an impact to
Mhm.
people. Um, from start to finish, how does the timeline? What's the average start to finish? Is this like a year long process? Is this like an 8 month process? From the time they make the first call to the time that the book is complete.
The books I work on, I tell people to be prepared to work for about a year, and you can work more quickly than that. If it's sort of a cut and dry business group, I just wanna tell people how to invest in real estate in Los Angeles County, and it doesn't involve a lot of personal things or research. You could knock that out in a few months. But most of the books I'm working on with my authors, we're doing more research. A lot of it depends on their availability. If they're traveling a lot, we can't meet as often. So I say plan on about a year, year and a half, and then definitely once you finish writing the book, you are not finished.
Yeah.
You need to go back and edit the book more than once, and then there's the production process and the marketing process of getting the book out to the public. So I let people know ahead of time, you're investing some time in this.
Yeah, that makes sense. I know artificial intelligence AI has been like a big topic in every field, in our field, probably your field, like that. Has that crept into the scenario at all yet? In your field?
Yes, it has, and first of all, I'm not worried about it. There will always be room for human thought and human creativity, And it's the latest new tool and toy, and I'm not against AI. It can be helpful for so many things, but I include in my contract that none of the content I create is AI generated.
Yeah.
And here's the really important part about that, and I also require my clients, any material you supply to me cannot be AI generated because the Library of Congress, if you want your book copyrighted, and you should have your book copyrighted so other people can't run off with your ideas, AI, the Library of Congress will only copyright books written by humans.
Mm, interesting. Yep. Makes sense. That makes sense. And I mean, obviously for copyright. Okay, I didn't know that. That's a big point on that. Maggie, what are your social channels? Where can people find your website, your work, and everything like that? If someone's interested in writing a book, in the audience, where can they find you?
Oh gosh, you're very kind to ask that. Little shameless self-promotion. Well, with an ego like this, I can't have just one website. I need to have two. MaggieMills.com. I bought my name 4,000 years ago at the dawn of internet. I was in marketing, like buy your own name. So MaggieMills.com.
It's awesome.
And I've been doing business as Take Maggie's Word for It for 20 years. There's that website. You can find me on LinkedIn under Maggie Mills, and you can always email me, Maggie at Maggie Mills. Shockingly enough, that's my email address. And if anyone listening decides to email me, first of all, thank you, and give James credit. He sent me, and then I'll your email.
I appreciate that. And Maggie, last question I have for you. Are there any projects that maybe you haven't done that you would love to just drop on your desk and come your way, or any genres, or or something that maybe you've done once or twice that you'd like to do more of, in terms of projects?
Oh my gosh. I am quite the crime buff,
Hmm.
and I would like to write the book for attorneys when the case is all over and get their real viewpoint about what happened behind the scenes of famous high crime cases. I just love that. I'm fascinated with the law. I watch all the crime shows. Yeah, I am that person. I can eat dinner and watch a scene from the coroner's office without missing a beat. Oh, they're taking out the liver now. Okay. And what did they find? So
That's
I kind of like crime. And then, a movie star wouldn't be bad. I read where one of the movie stars was very open about using a ghostwriter, and they flew them out to their place. So I would be fine with hanging out on Malibu for a few months to, get a real feel for my author.
Yeah. There you go. There you go. So for the audience out there, if you're in those genres, definitely connect with Maggie. Maggie, thank you so much for all your great insight, and great, answers to all these questions. And thanks for joining Adeptus On Air.
Well, you are a wonderful facilitator. You ask great questions. You make me think, and you are just great to work with. So you made it a wonderful experience. Thank you.
Thank you, Maggie. Thank you for the high praise. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to Adeptus On Air. If you like this episode, please subscribe and leave a review. The views and opinions by the podcast speakers and guests are solely their own and do not reflect the opinions of Adeptus. This podcast provides general information only and is not intended to constitute advice.